Hey everybody, Rex Bear Leak Project. How's it going? Recently, I had an opportunity to speak with Rob and Ben from Edge of Wonder, and they really gave me a glimpse into their minds and why they decided to start Edge of Wonder, why they decided to go down the very difficult industry of alternative media, especially when there's basically 5 conglomerates that control the majority of what people absorb on the television, also other media platforms. So enjoy this. And also, if you want to listen to the podcast in full, I've got the full podcast at leakproject.com for free. There are some audio opportunities. The audio is quiet on my end, so I did a little bit of editing. And also, we go really deep. So definitely, I wanted to keep that exclusive for Leak Project. And you'll know what I mean. So enjoy the presentation. And also subscribe to Edge of Wonder. I've got the links to their YouTube channel and their website in the video description box. Have an amazing day. Be excellent to each other. Be safe and be the change you want to see. Also, make sure to watch the exclusive interview of myself and Edge of Wonder at edgeofwonder.tv. Exclusive. Oh yeah, and I gave Rob and Ben 5G blockers. These are the custom handmade McFly edition tinfoilcap.co, and they literally block 5G and other harmful electromagnetic frequencies. We've tested them. They're amazing. They're exclusive. They're limited. And they're tinfoil hats. tinfoilcap.co.
Well, Rex, I did it for the hat. It was really the hat that got me interested.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, I mean, do you want to tackle this?
Yeah, I mean, both of us have our own backgrounds to this. This is something I've been into ever since I can remember, honestly. I mean, literally, the first time I got a library card, I was in 2nd grade. The first 2 books I got was one about Atlantis, and the other one was about the Bermuda Triangle. So I don't even know where this kind of came from, and I think some of it had to do with my own parents, kind of. My mom was kind of a little bit into this stuff. So I just kind of naturally just kind of grew up with this, had my own kind of experiences, and just always kind of had a feeling I was going to be doing something. And Rob and I started working, I moved from Ohio, moved to New York in 2008, and started working at the Epic Times, the media corporation, about 2010. And that's where I met Rob. And, I was, at the time, I was doing a few different things, and then I became one of their main photographers, and eventually I became the chief photographer and photo editor. And so I already had this kind of like spiritual background of having these kinds of interesting experiences, really into this different kind of concepts. I knew about Bill Cooper a long time ago. Like when 9/11 happened, I was already like, really into this stuff already. I mean, I was reading David Icke, after I saw The Matrix in 1999 and things like that. So I came from that background, and then there's this whole other aspect of being in the media and really seeing firsthand what was going on. Where I would go out on assignments, like I was in Ferguson at the height of the protests in Ferguson. I was at the Trump inauguration, the protests during the Trump inauguration. I was in Hong Kong, and even with Border Patrol in Texas, and also in Inglewood, which is one of the worst crime cities in America, in Chicago. And I would see certain events that would happen, and to me, they were very isolated. It was like, okay, this happened, this isn't really the big story, but I would see the mainstream media report that as the big story. And Rob was the creative director, and he's laying out the front page, and we just started having these conversations about really what is going on. And I think the Boston...
that was nuts.
In 2012, that really changed me as well, because, I'm seeing in live, like, the FBI are requesting information from the general public about any kind of photo or whatever, and I'm seeing all these things come in. And then, and there's like photos of people on the rooftops and everything. And then all of a sudden they have these like blurry photos of these two kids, and they're like, these are the kids. And I'm like, how did they come to this conclusion without looking at this stuff, But really in 2016, we already started coming up with an idea like, oh, this would be awesome to do a show where we can talk about all these different things. But,
Yeah. I mean, it would be like we were at a media and we're watching the news lie, like the mainstream media, we're watching lie every day as we try to report the truth at the Epoch Times, and it was a bizarre feeling. It just felt like we were in a different world. Like we were wondering where they were getting this stuff from. We didn't understand how they were coming to those conclusions. The mainstream media, not the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times although they were trying to report truthfully on everything.
They were trying to, but at the time with all this going on, it was because they're smaller media. They're like, oh, we can't really go too far with this, because.
At that time.
Yeah, at that time, So,
now here they are, like exposing Spygate and stuff like that, right? But yeah, so. I mean, seeing that stuff was really eye-opening, watching the mainstream media just lie in everyone's face. I'm watching stuff that's happening, like the actual source material of things that are happening, and watching them take out a little snippet and then make an entire story that's a lie around it, and then everyone in the country foaming at the mouth thinking that that's what happened. And I felt, of course, terrible about it, right? And not only that, but then when you start looking at anyone getting attacked for bringing up anything that's outside of what the mainstream narrative is comfortable reporting on. I mean, these things I would go home and I would be watching all kinds of different research at home, wondering why we don't have a place to talk about these things, why you get criticized and you're crazy as soon as you bring something up that goes a little bit outside of these agendas. And my story was really similar to Ben's. Like, I just grew up just being fascinated with all kinds of different things and getting into the spiritual aspect of these things really early on. And I read the Tao Te Ching when I was like 12 or 14. I don't even remember. It blew my mind. It just changed my entire life and my perspective on stuff, just to kind of, experience things that were outside of my own box that I was in, I think. And, when I was like 19, I think, that was a long time ago, I red-pilled super hard, like just realizing how society, just basically how we were set up to be in these, bubbles that everything was told to us a certain way, and then to realize that we almost were in a matrix, a world of delusion, where there was a lot more going on. It caused me to go into a really deep depression in my early 20s, and it took me a while to break out of that, to kind of get back on my feet and really kind of start thinking more about what I could do about it, rather than, oh, woe is me, what was I doing the first 20 years of my life, But yeah, here we are. We just really, with Edge of Wonder, we just really wanted to create a platform where it was okay to talk about any subject and really dig into it and give that thing a fair shot, rather than already going into and deciding that something is or isn't real, which is what we see on all of these different programs on mainstream television. That's just not the way to handle these things, I don't think.
Yeah, and just simply ask questions, not afraid to ask questions.
And also be okay with being wrong. Okay, we researched this thing. If we make a mistake, I'm going to just say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's fix it now. Because this isn't about that. This isn't about always being perfect or getting a Pulitzer or something like that. Like, we just want a dialogue, a healthy dialogue.
And just find the truth. No matter what topic we're researching, it's like we just want to try to find the truth of what our understanding is based on, what's out there already, and here's our conclusion, or here's just what we researched, here's what we found, and that's why we really encourage everyone to do their own research. Like, just don't trust us, with everything.
Really.
It's like we really encourage people to find it for themselves, because that's when people really gonna wake
we
up?
could sit here and talk all day long, but then we're just another head that someone's listening to on the screen, and we really don't want that. We want people to discover these things and wake up for themselves, because if someone's doing that, that's a strong mind, like someone standing on their own 2 feet in society and being like, you know what, I researched this and that's not what I found. If people are doing that, then what is the mainstream media going to do to them anymore? They can't be brainwashed, and they're just solid people.
I asked Rob and Ben what they think about the bizarre parallels that seem to be portrayed in cartoons and then happen in real life. Listen to this.
Dude.
Yes, that was the other thing that was weird.
What do you guys do about that?
Yeah. Also, we have tons of Simpson episodes that are like mirroring multiple different things, and everyone, if you bring it up, you're crazy.
Project Looking Glass?
Yeah. It's bizarre, right?
Have you found the truth?
Wow.
Well,
I mean, we'd been researching this stuff a lot before we started Edge of Wonder, but there is a difference when you're researching for yourself and when you're trying to present that information to another person and trying to be as responsible as you can. You go through a whole additional process of hey, I'm putting this out there. Am I doing the right thing? What information is important here and what isn't? And how do you tell this story to help people understand and also clear up as many notions in society about garbage that's been presented to us? And we're limited. It's not like we're perfect people, but we just do our best to present that. And also, one of the things that we feel is really important is that these things should be kept light. There's a lot of dark stuff out there. There's a lot of evil out there in the world, and why not have a platform where we can talk about some of this dark stuff and make fun of those turkeys because they deserve it, and joke around a little bit because there's so much out there, even in pop culture, that you and we all grew up watching.
Right.
And there's references we can use to describe a lot of these things. And the movies tell us everything. It's crazy.
well, yeah, and that's kind of how, when we first started doing this, we really kind of came together and was like, what do we want to create? Like, what would we want to watch, And so we really watched a lot of...
So Ben dressed up like Marty McFly, and I dressed up like Doc, and then we just got on screen, and the magic happened,
You got the 5G McFly edition on right now.
Yeah, I know, really. Yeah, that's why I like it so much. But yeah, and that was it. It was just like we came together and, we were seeing all these different YouTube channels, YouTube videos. And, a lot of them had this like fear porn thing going on with them, And I realized, well, that's not really, we want to give people hope. That was really the foundation, was like, one, give people condensed information that they can like take to their friends, and families and everything, make it a little bit more mainstream, give people hope at the end of this, make everything positive no matter how dark we get, and then add a lot of humor to it and pop culture. And they're like, this is what we would want to watch, So we just kind of created something that we would want to watch on our own. And then Eric, who's our video editor, he's just phenomenal. I mean, really, you know, a lot of the, not everything, but a lot of the editing work and everything. I mean, he does, and it's just been, without him, you know, it would have been really hard without him.
Amen.
I'll say that.
Rob and Ben discuss so many different topics. I ask them right here, what is the most important topic that they've found thus far with Edge of Wonder and their research?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really, I think there's a lot of topics. For me, it would be really the communism aspect and how deep the satanic elements, the communist elements, really, when we started breaking down everything and seeing how all these like so-called conspiracies were actually really tied together, there was a common theme that we found through all of them, which is really this kind of communist and satanic agenda that has spanned back for thousands of years, really. And seeing the connections play out through Saturn, through all of this stuff in our society, and how it's just mind-blowing how it's really connected. But that's what I would say for myself. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, so the two series that I think blew our minds the most, even though we had previously researched it, but again, when you're deep diving, you find even more stuff, right? Was the Deep State series that we did.
The whole Deep State series.
And the Communism series, and how connected those two were. We didn't, actually, even from the beginning of our show, just every single episode, it's almost like it rolls into the next. Like they're all connecting, and it's blowing our minds a little bit. But the way that the not only the alien agenda, the political agenda, and the Luciferian agenda or the occult agenda all kind of like are one big Venn diagram, it just blows our mind, really. And I think this whole shadowy deep state issue is something that just needs to be continually exposed. It is the most egregious, terrible scourge to humanity that has ever come about. I mean, they've been doing this, like Ben said, for thousands of years, and all of us are just made to be oblivious to it, and it just has to get continually exposed over and over again. It's so in our face, and we just fail to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, certainly you guys see it.
Wait.
Well, yeah.
And many people are starting to see it.
Yeah, and you see it, right?
This is where I ask them if they are seeing a difference and if enough people are actually making the change, making a difference. Listen to this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was kind of even shocking with us. Like Rob said, you know, we understood a lot of this, but because when we first started doing our Deep State series, we were like, we'll just do a couple videos on this and kind of move on. And then we started really seeing how deep this thing went. And it's like, oh my gosh, like literally this is like never ending. This like 2 videos that we're doing, it's just like almost every video we made afterwards had some element that tied into it. And you know, what's really fascinating is that we really and I think this is why the mainstream media, you know, started writing some hit pieces on us, because we started attracting people on both ends of the spectrum of, I guess what you could say, like the left and the right. Because our stance has always been, we're not left or right. We're just for the truth. You have, there's going to be Republicans who are also part of the deep state, and there's going to be Democrats that are actually part of the good guys. So it's like you can't really, you have to really look at the whole picture together, you know, and say, who is for truth? And that's what we started going after. And we started getting comments of people saying like, man, I was totally, you know, my views were, I guess you could say, very left-leaning views. And I started watching you guys' videos, and it just opened my eyes to a whole different realm of thinking, where I'm now starting to see so many different things differently now, you know, and including the political realm of stuff. And I think that's been the most complicated. And this is what's been complicated with the deep state, is that as soon as people start catching on or start to understand, they just change these names. I mean, that's how socialism really came about, right? communism started having a negative connotation, and it's like, well, let's just use socialism now, and and then progressivism.
I was gonna say, as soon as socialism got tired, they started calling it progressivism, and then some people are calling it globalism, and whatever. You guys are trying to create a new world order. It's the same thing. We get it.
You know why, right?
Yeah. I mean, tell us.
Yeah.
It's because they love us so much. They love us dearly. Or should I say, they love us like deer.
Now I ask the question, do they think an extraterrestrial presence, something non-human, could be controlling the planet at the top industrial levels? Check this out.
Well, Rex, let's get back to the MFers. Let's talk about them for a minute. There's MFers in every single part of society right now. There's MFers among aliens. There's MFers among deep state. There's MFers among politicians. There's MFers in the corporations.
Musicians, actors.
My third grade teacher was an MF. All right, I'm just kidding. She was a saint, really. I'm just kidding. But no, this is true, right? Like they're everywhere, and this is what's so crazy about this system, is that they didn't decide to do this in just one way. You can't look at just one entity and say, okay, this is the New World Order, because what they did is they created multiple entities, hundreds of them, like the UN, like certain religions that I won't mention on television because I don't want to offend everyone, like the United Nations. Did I say that yet? The United Nations is an important one.
You said UN.
The United Nations. Did I say that yet? The United Nations is an important one.
You said UN.
The United Nations. Did I say that yet? The United Nations is an important one.
You said UN.
Okay, so the UN.
Well, basically, Geneva, you could just say. I mean,
okay,
like
yeah.
headquarters
Like the Vatican.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you just say you weren't going to.
No, everybody knows that. Even Christians know
well,
that.
yeah, and the difference, the Vatican is not like.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then you're looking at like certain NGOs or like the Committee of 300, the politicians of the world. They're just all of these different cylinders that are all working towards this same goal to create this new world order, to get us all basically slaves of that system, and then to control us so that they can basically do whatever they want to do, which the goals have been laid out pretty much in.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the complicated part is that, it's hard to see like these NGO companies that he's talking about, right? Because it's like there's always like some other company that's behind that company, and that's where it gets complicated, because really to understand what's going on, you have to like really follow the money trail and get to the root source. And then you're like, oh my gosh, it's like, why does George Soros own all these different corporations, or like just these different hedge companies and everything else? And you start finding that there's like, wow, there's connections here to this. And especially when you start looking at the Clinton Foundation and you start seeing all these different other companies that have ties to this, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything in itself. But then when you start seeing these connections really line up and see who's behind some of these other companies and everything, that's when it gets really weird. And that's when things start hitting you like, wow, what is really going on here?
Well, and one crazy thing to point out, actually, is if you look at the way a corporation is structured, it functions like a religion. It actually functions almost in an exact same way that a religion functions, the corporation. That's how they get everything done so systematically.
And that's necessarily a bad thing,
I'm not saying it is.
Yeah.
It's just that they've got like a system of, the systems are all worked out. It's like, it's just fascinating when you start looking into that stuff. And for myself, I was a brand manager before this, so I would look at these things all the time, and it would fascinate me how all of these things got, basically from the pinnacle, from the very top, just go down, how executive orders get done, government does all of these things. It's all very similar in how this stuff is structured.
Mm-hmm. Now I ask the question, with all of the research that they've done, have they been able to break it down to a select group of bloodlines that control the majority of the show?
Yeah, definitely. And to go back to your question about the whole alien agenda thing, again, it's not necessarily something. Well, this is what they believe, right? I mean, they believe, they're worshiping the Lucifer that they believe in, which they believe that Lucifer was the one that gave them the true knowledge, and God the real God shunned them from this knowledge. So to them, these their gods, I guess you could say, are these aliens, probably, whatever. I mean, we find all kinds of references to the Dracos, right? I mean, you can look at India, you can look at Egypt. There's all these references to this,
or the Anunnaki too.
The Anunnaki as itself, as a whole, right? So, I mean, and when you're talking about the bloodlines, I mean, this is what they believe. They believe that they are the chosen people, and that their DNA has been mixed with these Anunnaki, and that they are better than humans, and therefore they're the privileged ones, and we're just basically here to serve them, and so they can do whatever they want with us, because it's you guys are here for us, and if they kill us, they look at it, this is a greater sacrifice for the greater good of forming our one world order.
Next question is, with all the doom and gloom, what about a light at the end of the tunnel? Are there white hats? And I asked them about their take on the Q phenomenon, which they have been researching and presenting information on for over a year. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people have been linked to the information that they have presented that way. It's always nice to get some optimism. You have to imagine it before it can happen. And Rob and Ben bring two sides to the story.
If there weren't this group of people in our government that were actually good and striving for hopefully undoing some of the harm that the deep state has caused throughout history, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now. It would have been impossible.
What's the next step for Rob and Ben at Edge of Wonder?
Well, I would like to see more people in our society
eat tacos,
waking up. Well, I always want to eat tacos, man.
I thought that's
Hello.
Somebody
say
I
tacos.
would really like to see more people waking up in society. I mean, we still have mass confusion across the entire world. There's lots of people waking up, but where is the source? There are very few sources. I mean, right now in the mainstream media landscape, the Epoch Times is probably one of the only big media, or potential to be big media, that's really trying to report. There's a few others, but it's like
the Daily Caller.
Yeah, it's really scarce out there, And then there's, when you want to know more about some of these other things, it's like, well, all we can do is try to get this information out there to more people, so that as these arrests are happening, as we start seeing more massive changes in our world, we don't have a situation where people are actually going crazy. And I'm not just saying that, I'm really worried about it. I'm just going to explain or give an example of this. When you have a gigantic portion of society who think, oh, I'm just so smart. I have this degree. I know this. This is how society is. Blah, 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 blah. You can't talk to them. Nothing happens. What happens when they start seeing that world falling apart around them? I went through that. That was something that happened to me in my early 20s, and it was the most painful thing that's ever happened to me. I would like to try to avoid that for other people. I mean, did you want to, to me, I just think if there's something that we can do to help wake people up, real wake, and I don't mean oh, I'm woke, like the way these leftists talk about. Again, I don't care about right or left, but some people say woke and it's this climate change globalism thing, and no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real awake.
It's combining the spiritual aspect into the truth, because to me, or to both of us, this really goes hand in hand. Because, we really truly believe as humans, we're here to really reach for that spiritual aspect of whatever it is that people believe in, because that's the foundation, and that's going to give you the hope and everything else. Because once you have that, it's a lot easier going through that process of awakening to the harsh reality of what's out there, you know? And I think for us to keep going forward, I mean, we just really want to, we have our own platform now on edgeofwonder.tv because we're being
Heavily censored.
so bad. And we just started working on, and we just produced our first episode of our new documentary series called The Old World Order. And, you know, we were just still like, wow, you know, I just can't believe we produced this, or just our team. You know, it's been a long process, and it was a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. But in the end, you know, it's like, you know, we want to take this to the next level. And we really want to give back to the people who are our fans and everybody else who has been supporting us. This is really like a big thank you to them. And, you know, and I think the main thing is that as people wake up, as he said, it's a difficult process in the beginning. And, you know, we just want people to know that, hey, we're here for you. There's so many people out there that can walk you through this process when you do start to wake up, when you do start thinking about these things, because it's very lonely. And I think for the people out there that, you know, are so overwhelmed by what's going on too, it's I look at it, isn't this a good thing that it's actually being brought out and talked about? Like over a decade ago, this stuff was going on, and these people were like being free about it in the open, because it's like, hey, we're unstoppable. Nothing is going to stop us. No one's talking about it. We can do whatever we want. And now people, just because people are talking about it, kind of brings up this hopelessness, but really it's kind of the opposite. It's like, wow, we should actually, we're in control. This is being brought out in the mainstream, and I'm seeing so many more people on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, so many more new channels coming out talking about this stuff. And to me, this is really exciting. It's like, wow, we're really changing the narrative so much that CNN have to report on memes that, the so-called conservative people are doing, because they're so afraid to report on the real news, because it's like, you know, they're trapping themselves in a box now. And, you know, it's like people are waking up, and all we need is 10% of the population to really wake up before we see that change.
Make sure to watch the full interview for free at www.leakproject.com, and the next interview exclusively at...
Thanks, Rex.
All right, we'll see part 2 on Edge of Wonder, right?